about a couple things that are specific to what I've heard you talk a lot about on your social media. You said that a single line in a police report or immigration file can destroy someone's life. Can you walk us through a real life example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read a police report that was just flat out wrong.
Hmm.
And once it's written,
Wait, wrong because they're just not thinking when they write it, or because they're trying to change the facts to skew it one way or the other, or why do you think it's wrong?
it can be either of those things, but I have seen ones where they have, I mean, I don't know, I can't put myself in their heads at the moment they are writing something that is factually untrue,
Right.
but they write these things and then they give it to the prosecutors who write up the cases and it's what they say is taken as gospel. And in
Mm.
fact, sometimes what they say is just flat out lies. And whether or not it's intentional or a mistake or they've taken someone else's word, I can't say.
Hmm.
However, they lie and they put these things out there. And once it's written, it becomes truth. And once these accusations are written, and once, the media shows up at an arraignment, and then it's printed in a newspaper, and then that kind of label is stuck with someone forever. A case that comes to mind of mine was a case where a client was accused of, I think they charged him with attempted murder, saying he drove his car into someone and and it was a slow news day, I guess, because the press went with it and I think it ended up like pretty close to the cover. I can't remember if it was like a front page story, but it was like a big story in the New York Post. And he was like, swore up and down to me. He's like, I swear, like, this is not how it happened. This is not what happened. Like, you will see. Like, I maybe put the car in neutral. I got out of the car. The car started rolling. I wasn't even in the car when it hit the person. I wasn't even in the car. And it was like, how am I going to even show that this is true? They're trying to
Right.
indict him. They're going into a grand jury. Like, and I sent my investigators out. We like literally scoured the neighborhood. We finally found this one angle of a surveillance camera from like a bodega or something that showed that he actually wasn't in the car.
Mm.
But the prosecutor had just run with it and the press had run with it. And like, yeah, eventually the case got dismissed. Did the New York Post ever print a retraction? Even if they did, it
Right.
was probably some little footnote on page 50. It's
Yeah.
not. And now this person, it's impossible to undo. Anytime anyone Googles him, any job he goes for, they're going to be like, you were charged with attempted murder.
Right.
Like when he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that once something is out there, it's out there, regardless of if it's truth or not. And then when the truth gets, you know, the facts get proven, it really doesn't even matter because people still see whatever that headline was. And as someone like you who's seen individuals and you know the full story, what is it like to watch those people get reduced to a headline or, a title of being a felon or doing something illegal when they haven't? What is that like to watch someone else and see what they go through?
I mean, it's devastating. It's something that, which is why, like, I even say it's so important to use language that is not dehumanizing, because
Yeah.
especially when someone is merely accused of something and just saying, oh, they're a criminal, they're a felon, they're a repeat offender, they're this, they're that, without understanding the full picture, that dehumanizing language fuels mass incarceration. It fuels this system that just grinds people up and cycles them through. And it's nearly impossible to undo once that narrative's out there. So, I try very hard to push back on these things, even when there is an accusation out there, and just say, hey, listen, accusations are just that.
Yeah.
Until you hear everything, you shouldn't jump to conclusions. I think a lot of people find it comforting to think, well, the system works, which is why, like, if I don't do anything wrong, I will never get in trouble. But
Mm.
that is not true. The truth is, in fact, the opposite. The system is designed to punish people. And when you're arrested, you're actually not presumed innocent. You're presumed guilty, you're presumed dangerous, you're just like thrown in a cell. It's like it's actually crazy how people, until they're in the situation or they have a loved one in the situation, they don't realize how easy it is for things to just spiral and the media to just repeat charges like they're fact, even if the charges never end up sticking. And so my whole career has been really pushing back against that, saying, okay, yes, there's a case, but it's not a headline, it's not a number. This is a human being, and we don't know all the facts yet.
Yeah. So putting yourself out there, especially on social media, you bring in the opportunity for a lot of people to call you names, call you biased, call you, put you on trial, so to speak. How has that been for you? What is it like to put yourself out there?
I think that it kind of all ties back. It's like I have been public for half my life because going on reality TV means
Yeah.
that you're putting yourself out there. And so I've dealt with a lot of a lot of hate. I regularly get death threats in my DMs. I get, really hateful messages. And I think there's this strong reaction, lots of keyboard warriors out there who just want to spew hate, whether they're even real people or bots. Sometimes I can't even tell because these are like people who don't have full names attached, who don't even have profile pictures. And so I try not to let it bother me too much, um, because I know that I am kind of speaking my truth.
Mhm.
I, and I also think that in terms of being biased, like I own my bias. Everyone is biased. Everyone's life experiences, everyone's circumstances have made them into the person who they are and made them believe the things that they believe. It's from their lived experience. And so I have seen the things that have happened, and that is why I'm biased. I'm biased because I've seen, thousands of people in court who have been lied about, who've been abused, who've been brutalized. When people say, "Oh, you're biased against the police," I'm like, yeah, I am. But that's because of the way that
What
I've
you've
seen them
seen.
operate.
Yeah.
So, you know, I speak out. It makes people uncomfortable, but I think my silence would make me complicit, and that's not something I'm ever willing to be.
Right. Okay. I love that. You mentioned a Texas mom who was snatched up by ICE, a story that's obviously more common than people want to admit. It's interesting because I was watching that clip on your Instagram, and somebody next to me was sort of watching over my shoulder and was like, that's so biased. That's not even true because there's millions of people, not millions, thousands of people that are total criminals and they're doing all these crazy things. And that's like the one, circumstance she's showing. What do you say to people like that? Because I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? The ones that are making a ruckus and are criminals, great, they should go. That's the whole point. But these types of people, this is really sad. She's being snatched up in the middle of the day. The kids were at school. Whatever, by the way, what happened to her?
I don't know.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
And I think
And
there's
what
so many
happens in a
people.
circumstance like that when her kids are at school? Like, who's picking them up? Like, how is her life going to turn out or her kids' lives? It's really upsetting.
Exactly. And I think, I think that people saying, "Oh, well, she's only showing one circumstance," what I would say to them is that this circumstance isn't rare. It's not. This is
Mm.
happening routinely now. We're hearing about it throughout the country. There are people getting snatched up. It happened just here in the city. My friend is a public school teacher. One of the students from her school went home to his apartment in the Bronx and found his family had been taken by ICE. This is happening a lot, and it's not people who are criminals. They're only offense. Sometimes these are people who are even, I mean, there were people arrested at immigration court. These are people who've done the right thing, who've come here, who are
Hmm.
abiding by the process, who are truly trying to do right by. These aren't people who are committing crimes. And furthermore, coming here illegally is a civil offense. It's not a crime regardless. And so this is, this is what ICE is doing now. They're like ripping people away from their children. These are people who've been here for, some of these people have been here for decades. They've paid taxes, they've built lives here, they've built families here, and they get taken into detention. And some of them are being deported to countries where their lives are truly in danger, where they will
Right.
be killed. And
Or,
so,
and they're not even from some of these places, and
right.
it doesn't even make any sense. I think the issue that I have, and listen, there are people that are like going to come for us for having this conversation because they're like illegal immigrants should not be here. I don't really get why people make such a blanket statement. Our president of the United States is married to an immigrant. Okay. So, like, everyone needs to calm down for 1 second about what they think an immigrant means. And not all immigrants, are eating dogs and killing people and hiding in bushes trying to rape your
Not at
wives and
all.
children.
Not at all. I mean,
It's really insane,
there are so many people, even people who voted for Trump who said, wait, but now my farm, all my workers are scared to come to work because they're scared of ICE raids. These are good, hardworking people. I thought he only wanted to deport criminals. Like, why is he
Right.
doing this to people who are just here supporting my business? They're raiding kitchens where people are working as cooks and busboys. They're raiding farms where people are doing, these are not jobs that Americans even want to do. There aren't enough people to staff these
Right.
jobs. And so it is just because someone is undocumented, they still, deserve rights. They shouldn't be targeted in this way. And I think like just seeing the humanity in people, would go a really long way in changing people's perspective.
Have you seen the movie? It's a documentary, Immigration Nation on Netflix.
I haven't. Should I watch it?
You should watch it, like tonight. So my friends, Shaul and his wife now, Christina, were the producers of that, and they were on the front line everywhere with going with ICE, like seeing everything that was happening. Even if you just watch the trailer, you'll be in tears after 2 minutes. And the thing that rang true to me, and they filmed this, the first time Trump was president and this whole thing started, was that it was a numbers game, just like it is now. Like Trump is saying now he wants 3,000 people arrested a day, I think. Back then, I don't remember what the number was. I think it was less. But Shaul and Christina are in a car with ICE where they get a call where the driver, I guess, the ICE guy, gets a call and it's on speakerphone. And his boss is like, yeah, go get anyone. We still are 20 people short or whatever. And he's like, okay, but I don't have anyone on my list that's like in trouble today. And he's like, I don't care. You got to hit the numbers. And he's like, we're filming this, right? And he's like, yeah, I don't care. And he said it's very hard to be a human and go in and break up these families when these people are nice people that have done their best to make a good life here. It's a really hard thing to watch. And then it goes into the whole thing of separating the kids and watching the kids. And like you were talking about kids that have their hands behind their back with
Zip
not
ties.
zip ties. Yeah. I mean, incredibly insensitive, bizarre. Like it's almost like no one is a human over there.
I know the dehumanization is so crazy. And, I think that it's just, these are moms, dads, these are people who've lived here for decades. These are people who've gone through a lot to get here to just try to survive, just try to put food on the table for their families. I think like this idea that, oh, it's only criminals, it's only bad people is so misguided. It's so untrue.